Hello and welcome back to this edition of Daily Actives brought to you by Bootleg Macro, the show where we review the most active stocks in Yahoo Finance every single day. We're going to go ahead and look at the very first stock that we have here. We have Plug. Plug, if you watched any of my previous videos from last week, 8 days ago, 9 days ago, you're definitely going to notice that I had a conversation about this with essentially myself and probably you, the viewer. But if we were looking at it, what I was primarily looking at was how the price here, you see the black line, that's price. The red line is the sell at the top of the range. The green line is the bottom of the range. We can see that this has been bullish. What I would have been talking about, and definitely was that the price had broken up above the top of the range. I did like that it was above the range, but I expected it to have at least a little bit of consolidation down towards the middle of the range. We can see now, though, that with where Plug closed today, it closed at 293. This is a massive move. The reason why I like it too is because you're seeing at the top of the range is really climbing higher and the price is starting to follow it. You got this little bit of a gully for what like looks like a week or so, 5 or 6 days, where you had that breakout. Now you're seeing a resumption. It has not broken the very top of this. It looks like the high was at 316. But what I love, if you're watching my previous videos, I love to see that we got it on high volume. There's 213 million shares traded today, compared with the average, it looks like of 99 million over the past 6 months. That's very, very positive. If we're looking at what we got from a sentiment perspective, we can see Plug here is well above the 50% line. It's at 60% bullishness, which is a reasonable level. We're looking at the 15-day. You can see we've made it all the way up to 71%. Today, we're at 67%. Now, when we continue on, the one thing that I definitely called out at the time was that we were seeing the fall of the volatility. Now, if you watch my previous videos, I always talk about how I think that the fall of volatility is when you're going to see the trend really reveal itself. Now, right now, what we're seeing is we're seeing a breakout in volatility. Most likely, this is going to be the peak. The reason I say that most likely it's going to be the peak is because even the highest volatility that we've been seeing has been at 2.296. It looks like today we're at 231. So it looks like we're probably near the peak of the volatility, which means that we're at least going to expect it to plateau out, if not start to fall. If it starts to fall and it's already negative, or at least it's at this 0% line and it could start to go negative, I would think the price would start to go sideways to up. You can see here in the standard volatility, we've seen a massive breakout. Obviously, volatility is up at 126%. That's pretty crazy to me. Correlation is very high to the volatility, which you'd expect as we think about the fact that we saw a massive explosion upwards. It was up nearly 25% today. If we look at the actual data table, the most important parts to me, if I'm looking at this, I'm looking at the close. I want to see where it is relative to the price. You can see this close, price, and volume color guide here. This means it's moderately high right now. Same thing with the volume. So again, I really like that we saw massive volume today. I like that we reclaimed right above, we're above the trade level, and we're still well within the top of the range. So the top of the range is at 317. The bottom of the range is quite a ways down there. I would continue to expect that we're going to see this price kind of consolidate from the side. It is positive on a 1 day, 5 day, all the way through the 1 year. So I really do like what I'm seeing here in Plug. Very good things to potentially come. Let's go ahead and look at Snap. So we're looking at Snap. One of the things, and I'm going to go ahead and look at the 6 months here. The thing that I like about this is that we've seen essentially it flip from bullish or bearish, excuse me. You can see it was bearish here in August, flip to bullish here, right? The like essentially middle of September. The top of the range started to break out. The price is climbing a little bit higher, and the price is essentially staying with the top of the range. The thing that I love about where we are now is we're essentially in the very middle. If I go down and look at the data table really quick, I assumed, and this is correct, is that we're very much right in the middle of where we were. It's really interesting that this was up 0% today. There was absolutely no move from yesterday to today, which is a remarkable thing, especially considering that yesterday we saw a massive volume, significantly high is how it's described here, because you see 266 million shares traded. So you can see that yesterday we saw a pretty big move. I do not like the fact that we are seeing big volume on a move down. I will say right now that that is not a very good sign. Obviously, if you're watching my videos on Snap in the beginning of September, I was definitely talking about it essentially closing this gap. It looks like it did here on the 22nd. And we've essentially seen a resumption of that bearish trend. I do not like to see that. Now, if we're looking at the sentiment, we are still above the 50% line, but we're coming down. We're at 52.7 on the 15-day. We're at 55.8. It's a little choppy, to be honest. Now, thinking about where we are from a volatility perspective, I'm assuming that we're going to see this roll over. The volatility continues to roll over like this. As I've said before, I think trend really reveals itself when volatility is falling. The volatility continues to fall, and we see a negative correlation here. I am a big fan of thinking that this is going to go sideways to up, which actually would be. I'm not a big cup and handle person, or like I don't know, like signal, or I don't know what you guys call, like whatever formations, whatever they're called. But I'm not a big fan of paying attention to how those operate, but I do pay attention to how the data is operating. We are still bullish on the full day in terms of bullishness and the 15-day. We're starting to see that volatility roll over. And When I think about where this is relative to its range, it is right in the middle. It is in the normal range right now for where Snap should be based on the moves that it's seen. If there's anything concerning, it's that we're below the trade level. We definitely want to get above 780 and close. The top of the range is still at 905, so we're seeing something positive there. But we are negative now on the 3 month as well as the 6 month and the 1 year. We have been negative. The 3 month had a few days, it looks like here, very middle of September, where we were actually slightly positive. We have not been positive on the 3 month. I think the 3 month is more of what you consider to be possible trend. So that's a little concerning to me. Let's go ahead and look at Open. Let's see what we have here for Open. Open is an interesting stock to me because this one has been essentially a cult following. I'm going to go ahead and do the 6 month. The nice thing is, I would say, is that again, this is also in the very middle of the range. We're seeing the top of the range come down, the bottom of the range is coming up. If you look at where we are in terms of the type of moves that we're seeing, this thing has essentially been a rocket from 60 cents at the very beginning of July all the way up to where we are. Where are we now? It looks like essentially $8, which is a massive move if you've been able to capture it. Anything positive from what we're seeing here? Yes, I would say that definitely the fact that we've been on very low volume the past few days is very positive, especially considering. I mean, 175 million shares is nothing to like sneeze at, but if you're looking at the average as being 216 million over the past 6 months, it's kind of crazy. We look at the daily sentiment. We're still very bullish. We're very much above the 50% line here. You can see we're at 54.8%. On the 15-day, this is where we've seen the real negative move. Obviously, we broke up above the top of the range, or the top of the range. There's no range here. When we talk about breaking up above the sentiment, the 50% sentiment line with bullishness, you can see that now we've actually, for the first time since it looks like the very middle of June, we are now back below the 50% line. We've seen it all the way down. It looks like at 57% bullet or bearishness, only 42% bullishness. 46% bullishness here. I'm very curious about what this is going to do over the next few days. This is a really interesting spot for Open because it is truly in the middle of the range. So it could just sit here. I would say that the bottom is probably going to be that 709. That's probably going to hurt some people depending on what they're looking at. The thing I love, though, is I'm starting to see the volatility roll over. We have really seen a massive move. For the first time, we're going to see this thing potentially roll over. This is the highest volatility that we've seen going back at least 6 months. What I like as well is that we are seeing a negative correlation. So if this continues to go more negative and the volatility continues to fall, you're probably going to see the price go sideways to up. So I am kind of bullish on what I'm seeing here in Open. While the price is exactly in the normal range, obviously we could come down. I'd like to see us close above that trade level at 821. That would be a big deal. Obviously, we have the top of the ranges at 1182. So there's some possible room to run. And based on what we're seeing here in terms of the volatility and the correlation, there's a future price path where we see a price to rise. Now, we are negative on the 5-day, but we're positive on every other rolling return, which is incredible. Especially, I mean, that 3 month is still insane at 1,000%. Obviously, we were up significantly. We were up 1,800%. So there's definitely room where this could come down. It definitely could consolidate. I assume it's going to be towards a magnet of the trend itself. It's either going to bounce up there and then fall back down, or it's going to hit there and then go all the way through. Let's go ahead and see what we have next. Let's go ahead and look at NVIDIA. Big fan of seeing what we're doing in NVIDIA. The reason why is because NVIDIA is one of the bellwethers of the stock market, and it is showing me a very interesting move in general. So if we look at this, the thing that I like the most is that we've seen it go from bullish, incredibly bullish in May. It went bearish here in the middle of August. We've essentially gone sideways, and now we're hitting the top of the range. And it looks like the top of the range is starting to break out a little bit. I'm assuming that this is going to be a higher high once we get bullish, because we haven't really seen the top of the range be. It looks like 189 there. Where's the top of the range now? 190. So that's a really good signal from what we're seeing from NVIDIA. Especially considering that if we look at it from the volatility of what we've seen recently in this bull market, it's been low volatility. I love low volatility. Low volatility markets are incredible, especially for a bull market. If you ever traded back in the 2013 market, that was an incredibly low volatility bull market where I think we were up 30% for the year, but it was just like 1% a day. And what I like is that we've seen essentially a basing consolidation. We're probably going to continue to rise higher. Now, what I would expect to see is a big increase in volume from some sort of like news event. I don't know exactly what it could be. It could be anything, but you can see back here, we were seeing 600, 500, 600 million shares traded back in April when we started to get this bull move going. So I would expect that we could see something probably in the range of like 4 to 500 million shares traded one day. What I like as well is that the volatility just resets. So we're starting to break back out. The correlation is slightly negative, could easily go positive, and we could see some like gaps up inside of NVIDIA. I'd love to see this thing at $200. The volatility obviously is pretty flat. Price hasn't really been moving. The thing that's most fascinating to me is that we still have a bearish trend. I would expect that this is going to be flipping to bullish pretty soon here. Obviously, we've been at the significantly high level of the range as well as the moderately high level. The volume has been not anemic, but nothing really to write home about. I mean, yesterday we saw volume was like moderately high, but nothing. I'd like to see a significantly high or an extremely high. I'd really like to see the price break out an extreme high as well as get extreme high volume. If we go all the way back, we probably saw that when we started to see the bull market get going in NVIDIA. You can see a little bit of it here at the very beginning of June. I'm sure NVIDIA's had some days where they've had just crazy volume. This was obviously a big crazy day in April, but that was when we were hitting a low. So maybe we don't necessarily want to see big volume in NVIDIA at the moment, but I'd like to see a little resumption. I'd like to see it clearly stay above the trade level, maybe hit the top of the sell level, and then see this flip. Now it's positive on the 1 day, 5 day, 15 day, all the way through the 1 year. So very, very positive on what I'm seeing in NVIDIA. Let's go ahead and look at Intel. In full disclosure, I wish I would have bought Intel. I haven't, but you should always buy what the government's trying to get people to buy. Let's go ahead and take a look at the data. Now, Intel, as I already mentioned, is very interesting because this is what the government wants you to buy in America. So I'm not saying that you necessarily need to believe in like government ownership, but I will say that when you have an administration that wants to buy stocks and help those stocks make money for the American people, you might want to buy in just because that is a large amount of capital that is going to be pushing into it, as well as political influence. So now we look at what we've got going on in the past 9 months. You can see it was essentially anemic. There was nothing happening in Intel until we got this move. I mean, essentially, if we look even on the 5 year, not really much. It was essentially down. We saw a little bit of bullishness into what looks like the middle of 2024. It's essentially been down, and now we're getting a resumption of what looks like some bullish behavior. Go ahead and look back at the 3 month chart. The thing that I love is that I'm seeing the top of the range scream higher. I'm seeing the price essentially stay at the top of the range and continue higher. Even on the chart here, we're starting to see some really big moves. I mean, it doesn't seem like a big move to be up 7% in a day, but when you're talking about something that's 170 billion in market cap, that is a massive move. If we look at the volume as well, like the volume continues to be above the range, above the average over the past 3 months. Let's see what the 6 month is. It looks like the past 6 months we've been looking at about 100 million shares traded. Today we saw 162 million shares traded. That's huge. The thing I love about what I'm seeing in Intel is that we're not really bullish. We're only at 49% bullishness on the daily. We are just breaking back up above the 50% line on the 15 day. So we're only at 55% bullish. The thing that I would say is slightly negative is that we're seeing the volatility breakout, but you're seeing the correlation rise with it. So when volatility is breaking out and correlation is breaking out, you know what's going to happen. It's going to be a gap higher, most likely. Now, if we look at the price, there's some concerns here from where you could actually enter, which I think has been the big problem for me, is that we're essentially moderately high, right? That's what this pink background means on the price on the close. We're moderately high. We've been significantly high for the past few while, and we essentially haven't seen it come down out of the top of the range since it looks like the 17th of September. Now, the volume is in the normal range. We've seen some massive days and we see the prices moving. It looks like the top of the range is at 39. We still have higher highs. We're still positive on the 1 day all the way through the 1 year. Got a positive, got a future price path of price to rise. So I really like what I'm seeing here in Intel. But tell me what you think in the comments below. I'm just going to make this a short video for today. If you want to see any more of my stuff, you can always follow me on Twitter, bootleg macro. If you want to watch any more of my videos, please subscribe. I do videos. I've done like 300. I'm coming up on 400. I really don't have that many subscribers, so I encourage you to check it out. I will talk to you soon.